wanted to take some time to talk about mountain flying. I found myself in BC about 6 years ago, and I guess I'm forced into mountain flying. It's a necessary evil in this corner of the country, and it's an absolutely stunningly beautiful necessary evil at times, and it can be also quite hazardous at times. And I guess that's what we want to drill down about. So to start off with, again, I am not an instructor, and anything I say should be taken with a grain of salt, although I think it does carry a little bit of weight. I am just a private pilot. But I'm a private pilot who's alive, so I guess I'm doing something right every now and again. So, first off, I got 5 things I want to talk about. One of them is a little lengthy, so excuse the length if I start rambling on. But number 1, if you're going to fly in the mountains, training, training, training. I can't overemphasize that enough. If you have a private pilot license, you wouldn't just hop into a float plane without proper training. You need to know what you're doing. Go get an instructor. Go for a couple hours flying around in the mountains. They'll show you things like box canyon turns, determining the windward and leeward side of mountain ranges, how to approach a mountain range at a 45. There's no substitute for training, and I cannot emphasize that enough. That's the number 1 thing. Before you think about crossing the Rockies, crossing the Appalachians, whatever mountain range it is you're thinking about going through, you need to know what you're doing. It's not rocket science, and a lot of it is common sense, but it really should be pointed out to you, and it's something that you need to practice. So number 1, training is everything. The second thing I want to talk about is having a plan. That's not just a flight plan, it's not just a what am I going to do if the engine quit plans. It's a continuous evaluation of what you're doing, right from the pre-flight all the way till the time you tie down when you get to your destination. Plan, plan, plan. Your plan could be continuously looking out the window, wondering where I'm going to land. Continuously wondering, well, if this air gets any rougher than it is right now, what am I going to do? Your plan might be to do a 180 and go back home, or go back to wherever it is that you took off, or to the nearest airport, and wait for a better plan. If you don't plan mountain flying, if you aren't continuously evaluating what's going on around you, you're probably in for a world of hurt. The third thing I want to talk about, near and dear to my heart. You've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I'm a weather briefer here in Canada, the Flight Information Center. So, weather. Weather is also almost as equally important as training. The training will help you determine what to do when you're faced with certain weather situations, but weather is a killer in the mountains. Control flight into terrain, VFR into IMC, there's all kinds of different ways that you can find yourself hurting really badly in the mountains due to weather. And it's not just the weather conditions as they are, it's not what can possibly happen. Yes, weather can change in a minute. It all starts with the weather briefing, and of course, this is where it's near and dear to my heart, because I'm a weather briefer. And don't just call and get a weather briefing and listen, which sounds silly. You have to listen, obviously, but don't just listen to the weather briefer and then say, okay, yeah, I got it. You really, really, really need to understand the weather. You need to understand what's being told to you. You need to understand what a 30-knot wind means when flying through a mountain pass. You need to understand when we recommend or don't recommend flying through a certain mountain pass unless the ceiling is 5,500 feet. So for example, the area around Hope, at Kamloops, we recommend that you don't fly through Hope, either Highway 1, 3, or 5, whichever. Don't fly that route unless you have 5,500 foot ceilings. So if you don't have a 5,500 foot ceiling, what does that mean? What are you going to encounter? What are you going to see when you look out the window? You're going to be flying through a tunnel is what you're going to see. You're going to have mountains on 2 sides of you and clouds on the top. That's not somewhere where I want to be flying. So understand the weather, study the weather, go back to your PPL or your CPL and refresh yourself on mountain weather, on what the different types of clouds that can form in and around mountains, what they're going to mean to you when you're flying. It's all well and good that, oh, well, you know, my personal minimum is this, and I need an 8,000 foot ceiling, but an 8,000 foot ceiling of towering cumulus or an 8,000 foot ceiling of vaulted cumulus, they're going to be a completely different animal. So pay attention to the weather, understand what you're hearing from the briefer, and for God's sakes, call and get a weather briefing. So the number 4 thing I wanted to talk about was setting personal limits for yourself, and I just alluded to that a minute ago when talking about the weather. What is your personal limit? Me, I'm a wuss. I don't fly unless, I won't go through mountains, I should say, unless conditions are pretty perfect. I want at least a 9 or 10,000 foot ceiling. The minimums are 5,500 feet. That's not my limit. I want to see a better ceiling than that, or else I'm not comfortable flying through mountains. Because I know the weather can change. I know things can change in a moment. So unless I see weather that I like, I'm not going. So set your personal limits. I strongly recommend at least one personal limit that should be not more than 25 knot winds at the mountaintops. If you're flying through Hope and the briefer tells you that the 6,000 foot winds are 40 or 50 knots, don't do it. You're going to be sorry. There are anomalous occasions where you get a low-level jet and the conditions are perfectly smooth. But 99% of the time, if you have a 25, 30, 40 knot wind at 6,000 feet, it's going to be bumpy as heck. And when you talk about personal limits, also keep in mind your passenger. You might have a limit of 6,000 feet and a 30 knot wind, and I don't mind moderate turbulence, so I'm going to go flying. Well, think about what your passenger is going to be feeling and what kind of mess you're going to have to clean up if they have a bad experience in your airplane. So personal limits, very important as well. Last thing I want to talk about, it's not so much a British Columbia phenomena, but it can be, density altitude. Hot summer days, high altitude airports, you could run into a problem with airplane performance trying to take off out of certain airports. I think the highest airport in British Columbia that I can think of is only about 4,000 feet, that's Anaheim Lake. So density altitude doesn't play an absolutely critical role like it can, say, in Colorado, where you have airports at 9,000 feet. Huge difference. So, all that said, once again, get training. Have a plan. Get and understand a weather briefing. If you don't understand a weather briefing, ask the briefer questions. You are not wasting a briefer's time by asking questions. Set your personal limits and personal limits if you have a passenger, and pay attention to density altitude because it can make a big difference. All that said, if you do it right, mountain flying is absolutely beautiful. It's stunning scenery here in BC. And I imagine, I haven't flown in the mountains of the US, Colorado, or Utah. I imagine it's quite lovely as well. And I can't wait to try once all the COVID restrictions are over. So all that said, enjoy your mountain flying. Please don't become a statistic. And again, I am not an instructor. Go talk to a certified flight instructor and get some instruction on mountain flying. Thanks a lot.